just reviewed the Vaqueros Atlas II in the RS200 just now for a training session to go through all the features, the pros and cons, and what we think of it.
We've got the Atlas up and running. We're going to use it to ping the start line each side this time. The jibe round in a second. And then we're going to use the Atlas to essentially give us coach feedback on how good our starting was. What do I mean by that? So normally, if you're in a long start line, it's very hard to know down precisely how far or close to the line you are. Which is why line sag exists. And when you're in a race, you've got all the other boats to worry about, so it's even worse. So what we're going to do, or what we do sometimes in practice, is set a really long start line, as if we're in a big event, and essentially try and time the time and distance to perfection, but from a while away, because at events you don't rack up right next to the line, you rack up sort of 5-10 boat lengths away from the line. Normally we need a rib to be able to do all this because, well, you need a rib to be on the start line to tell you how far away you were. Now this time what I can do with the Atlas now is I can say, okay, I think I was bang on, or I was a boat length away, or I was 5 meters away, and so on, and the crew can tell me exactly how many meters I was away from the line after we've pinged both ends and used the GPS. So that's what we're going to do, and that's going to make us better at starting. So we've had a look at a little bit of the features to do with the port and starboard sailing angle. So if we look at the Atlas here, we can switch it to, these are the different features it has, but also that's the starting feature. What we've done is we've sailed upwind and we've got the wind angle at 69 degrees and our port tack we're on average at 100, and starboard we're average at 38. So this obviously gives us a tacking angle of 62 degrees in this wind. We've got 2.2 average in terms of knots of speed. We also got the speed and the heading below, the two most important things. So what we can do is we can either set this manually or we can automatically setting it. It has features for both. But this is really useful because we can compare our angle of sailing compared to what we've usually been on that tack. A lot of the time what this is doing, especially in training for you, is giving you confirmation about whether your beliefs are correct or incorrect. A lot of the time people come out of marks with no bearings and think they're on a lift or a header, or they wait till the next shift to be able to tell them that. But if you're able to compare what you're at before, it's giving you that information, whereas before you had to remember that in your brain, whilst there's lots of things going on in the race course as well. And an interesting feature that before I've actually tried to use when training to try and figure out, what is my mean angle here. Everyone who's using a compass is always figuring out what is their mean angle on this tack and how am I doing relative to the mean, whereas it's storing that for you automatically, which I think is a distinct advantage. If I'm on that training mode here, we've got the speed over ground in knots, we've got the heading up here, we've got the heel here, and the trim. I think the trim is slightly affected by the angle we've put the Atlas at. But for instance on the 200, I've just gone over the tension rope here as we're fixed on that. We've got the downhaul normally lying here, and that's completely out the way, doesn't get in the way at all. And the straps are very efficient, but also it's a very thin frame, so essentially what I'm saying is it doesn't get in the way of things, which is very nice. Because there's not a lot of places you can put it up here. Lots of people put their compass up at the top over here, and we could do the same with the Atlas as well. It wouldn't get in the way here because of how thin the frame is, which is really useful.
One thing that I already found impressive is that we got in 20 minutes ago. I have just got changed, and whilst I was in the changing rooms, the the Atlas II was already syncing to my phone. So when I got up here, all the data was already ready to go on the app, which is fantastic, and I could have exported it in a few different file formats to wherever I wanted. Now, multiple buttons on the side were different things to do. One thing that does annoy me sometimes using some watches is that they have limited buttons, which means that you have to do one feature, you have to press and hold a button here, and then you press another one here, and it seems to have a button for every feature, which I think is really good. And then the master button just scrolls through the different ones you have. So for instance, if you're racing and you want minimal information, you've got speed, you've got heading up here. This is if you were allowed the speed on the GPS, and it would change depending on the profile that you've inputted as well. You've got the timing going on here, you've got the distance to line, and you can customize that, which is really nice. Now, the other benefit I thought, especially compared to having just a normal compass such as a Tactic, which I use as well, is to have the GPS element for training. Why, you might ask? Some people might think it's a bit overkill, and I can understand that. But what it allowed me to do today is we were focusing on tacks and jibes in short courses, often under pressure to be able to get them in, but always to do them well, always maximum speed. Now what I could do is see the minimum speed that I was going during a jibe. It's a little bit more difficult during a tack because there's more going on and the distance you're crossing the boat is harder. But if you go into a jibe and the wind is relatively stable, and you can set a goal for the minimum speed you want to reach during the jibe and how quickly you get back up to speed. For instance, today my goal was to make sure that I could get the golden 5 knots all the way through the jibe. That's how I knew it was a good jibe, because the speed didn't drop below 5. Now, did it always happen? No. But it gives you something to aim for. That's the thing. And it then focuses your mind when there's not other boats around to be able to focus your mind of how do I make this faster. And I discovered things that I could do to make the boat go quicker, because it was always showing me the speed clearly in front of me in the setting I wanted, and then I could adapt my sailing towards that. And it gives you that figure that's not so arbitrary as just feel of how fast the boat was going through the jibe. And I think that's an important thing as well, especially when you're perhaps not with a similar boat out there.